hello to all of our listeners out there. I'm Seth Naicker, reporting to you live from Johannesburg, South Africa, in LA. That's right, LA, not Los Angeles, but Lower Alberton. So if you're out there, I'm in studio today with Graeme Codrington of Tomorrow Today. We're looking forward to an awesome time of conversation, story sharing, and some thought leadership. Those of you that have been tracking with us, we have been over the last 6 months. In fact, since this weekend and the last 2 days, I think we're at about 208, 209 days of lockdown, living in a COVID reality, level 1. So if you're out there, I know that it's been happening in other places and spaces of the world. Be aware of COVID. Be safe wherever you're at. But since March 26th, in South Africa, we've been doing this online broadcast, and we've had amazing friends from all over the world. And one of my local is Naicker South African friends that I've known for many years, Graeme Codrington, is with me today by way of co-sharing the conversational space as we think together, as we share together, and hopefully create what can become a beautiful recovery from COVID-19. And Graeme Codrington, for those of you that have been paying attention to what he does, he's in that space of thinking about the future. He's in that space about thinking, if I may say, smartly and wisely and with clarity. So we have someone who can journey with us in that way. For those of you that are online, we are coming to you via BeLive onto my public page. And as we continue with the show, want to let you all know that you are welcome to participate with your comments and so on and so forth. And because it's an online broadcast, you're also welcome to share it. Aha, I see Graeme Codrington is in studio right now. Let me bring him on in. What's up, Graeme?
Hey, Seth, lovely to be chatting to you this morning.
How are you doing and how is the family?
Well, I suppose during COVID, we always answer that question with compared to what? Because compared to what we had planned for 2020 and what our dreams were for this year, it's maybe not looking quite as planned, but compared to what we could be, we're doing well. And that's not a flippant answer. I think this year is stretching us. It's disrupting us. I think possibly many of us in the future will look back and think it was a bit of a gift because it helped us to learn and grow and develop. But it's not a gift that feels good in the moment, And so we're moving on. Final quarter of the year, we surviving is, I suppose, the long answer, but an important question to ask these days.
Yeah, I mean, one of our colleagues over these months of conversation and engaging on in such a time as this, Graeme, he said, don't waste a good crisis. Exactly. And then I followed that quote to find out that Churchill, there's many things Churchill said, there's many things he did, but he put that out to say, don't waste a good crisis. And I know that today, while we're in conversation, we're going to maximize this crisis by way of thinking together and being aware of what we can do in light of our time. So Graeme, please tell us a little bit about, before I read from some profile doc, I know that, there's family, there's life, there's tomorrow today, you've been global, but please tell us a little bit about where you're at currently, what you've been busy with as we catch up with you. I know that you've been a global trotter, if I can say. I know COVID-19 would have hurt some of that. So how's it been going and where you at currently?
Yeah, no, look, Seth, what I do for a living is the one-word description is I'm a futurist. So I'm a scenario planner. I help organizations. I earn my money from big corporates, but I also work with nonprofits, faith-based organizations, educational organizations around the world to help them anticipate the future, anticipate especially disruptive change, and then prepare for it today. I have a company. I'm one of the co-founders of a group called Tomorrow Today Global, and it's kind of 50% tomorrow, what might happen in the future, 50% today, how do you prepare for it? And my life is traveling around the world, working with people all around the world. I was in 25 countries, 72 cities last year, alone, and I had a schedule lined up for 2020 that was very similar. And in March, as we went into lockdown all around the world, different countries handled it in different ways, but I began getting emails and phone calls from people saying, sorry, we postponing, and then a few days later, follow up, sorry, we've cancelled our conference, our strategy session, our workshop. And I went from having a really good looking full diary to literally nothing. And so needed to take some of my own medicine, if you like. It's wonderful to be a consultant. You can come in and tell people what to do and then walk away and leave them to actually do it. This time, this year, I had to take some of my own advice and look at how do you deal with disruption? How do you handle deep change and apply some of our thinking to our own business? And partly, I think it's luck. Partly, it's the result of 20 years of hard work giving us a good foundation. Partly, it's just about being in the right space at the right time. But we've been able to rebuild the business probably since about May or so, as people have realized they need to still think about the future and deal with disruption. I mean, that's an obvious thing. We're living through disruption, but I think people initially were in the shock phase. They were in a crisis mindset, and as people have begun to shift to say, okay, no, this is it might not be reality forever. It's not the new normal, but it's certainly the new reality for now. They've looked around for people who can help them to navigate that, and our team has been on people's lists, which has been wonderful. So the last few months have been quite busy, thankfully.
Graeme, thank you for that catch up, and I wish you well. I know that you've inspired a lot of people, but partly I think you've had to inspire yourself, as you say in your own words, to think through these difficult times. And for those of you that are out there, when Graeme says that, you know what he's talking about. When work cycles started to change, work getting taken away. For some of us, we've had to reinvent, recreate, innovate. In Joburg South, in Lenasia, some of our people, they call us, we're just making a plan, bro. We're making a plan to get by. And it's that hustle. It's the real hustle of life to, take care of your family, take care of your friends, take care of your responsibilities. And Graeme, just by way of a catch up with you, I'm so grateful to know many inspiring people that have shared so many hopeful stories. I mean, this crisis is a difficult one. Marisha has been reflecting more especially in the church sector of her life around what can we do to deal with the traumas, to deal with the difficulties. And I've been able to report even on the show that we have some amazing people that have come alongside with beautiful generosity, acts of kindness, a willingness to see how we can come alongside one another. And on my side, Graeme, with the work that I do between the NPO sector, the academic sector, and the business sector, I'm also grateful for people who have stepped up to say, hey, guys, it's going to be a tough time, but how can we meet you halfway? How can we adapt, the work that you're doing? And I mean, if it hadn't been, for the great friends and people to step in and come about, I don't know what we would have done. But for people to know that, by and large, it's been an awesome time. One of the things we did was find some creative activities. The latest one that we did, Graeme, was a reinvention of the bunny chow. So, to break stereotypes, because I'm from KwaZulu-Natal, we decided to go to the Western Cape and do a Gatsby, but we did it in Lower Alberton. So we had to create some family fun and, just get around. So, friends, those of you that are online, I see some viewers that are there. I'm in studio with Graeme Codrington. I want to do good by him. In a South African culture, Graeme and I have been back in the day to a few conferences, and we like celebrating our speakers. So I just want to celebrate Graeme Codrington, and this is from his his online Graeme Codrington Navigating the Future site. So Graeme, forgive me if there's any irregularities in this reading here. It's the person who moderates the site. So here we go.
It's my fault. So that's what you're saying now.
Yeah. Scenario planner specializing in the future of work. Graeme helps companies around the world understand the forces that are shaping our lives, whether it's the current COVID disruption or the disruptive trends that will define the rest of the 2020s. Graeme is an author of 6 best selling books and lectures at a number of top business schools. As one of the founders of the strategy consulting firm Tomorrow Today, he works with a global research team to ensure his insights are constantly updated and relevant to each of his clients. He now works with clients around the world from his fully equipped home video studio in Johannesburg. And friends, while he doesn't talk about it a lot, I'd like to say to you, he's not only just Graeme Codrington, this is Dr. Graeme Codrington. He's done the academic work, he's been in so many spaces. So, Graeme, how's that for the read up? Is that good on your profile?
That was good reading. I think my mother wrote that, so she'd be proud.
Yes, but tell your mother he needs to add there Dr. Graeme Codrington.
I don't throw my academics around. It's the privilege of having 5 degrees that you never have to mention them again.
There we go. There we go. So Graeme, thank you for being in studio today. Part of what we'd like to do in this next moment is take some time around story. So if those of you that are out there, I've been a part of a national campaign that has reached just up until March. We did the stats up until March. About 18,000 people around South Africa, and with its global reach, anchoring with a movie called Beyond the River, it has created a space for us to think upon diversity, inclusion, and justice in new ways. So please, as Graeme and I are with you, and as we prime ourselves toward this moment with Graeme on some personal story sharing, let's have a look at this, if I may call it in my own humble way, some award-winning work that has been done by the NGO Heartlines in its continuation of values-based leadership. Here we go with a video that brings in synopsis for us their campaign, What's Your Story?
The world moves fast around us. Sometimes it feels like a blur. We pass each other and make judgments of each other constantly. You're doing it right now, seeing this woman across the street. We cross and recross, but rarely connect. We struggle to understand each other, so we don't trust each other. I know your name, but I don't know who you are. You know my name, but do you know my story? What would help us see beyond our perceptions? Story. Our stories are what make us human. Stories have the power to overcome our perceptions. Sharing a story isn't hard. It's a simple human act, connecting us deeper to people we already know. Reach out, ask, invite, then listen, truly listen. Stories have the power to overcome our perceptions. They help us understand. Ask, listen, tell. It's our way of building our nation. Heartlines has developed resources to help you on this journey. These resources will empower you to build understanding, trust, and reconciliation through personal storytelling. Imagine if we were part of a powerful wave of change, one story at a time. We all have a story to tell. What's your story?
What's Your Story? A beautiful campaign that has reached out to our country through products like Bridge Leadership Retreats. We have done this in NPO sector spaces with non-government organizations. We have been able to engage with schools and teachers. We've also been in the corporate space, allowing people to engage through the power of personal storytelling. So in studio, I have with me Graeme Codrington, another one of my friends who, by and large, has made a decision many years ago. And one of the things I didn't tell you was why I like hanging out with Graeme was he started some of the work that I know him to do today because he loves young people. back in the day as a youth worker and also a musician. And Graeme, today it's a great honor to be with you. I've enjoyed seeing where our careers have led us and the fact that we've stayed in contact over these many years. My dear friend, that's our national campaign, What's Your Story? I know that this moment is prime for you to share with us a piece of the story that gets behind the title. And like you said, it's not about the degrees, it's really about the work and the love and the passion. So, friends, those of you that are out there, enjoy with us now as I hand over to Graeme to take a moment as we take a snippet of his personal story and reflect on it together. Over to you, Graeme.
Thanks, Seth, and thanks for the opportunity to do this. I'm hugely passionate about the work that you and the Heartlines team are doing around this talk story approach and using storytelling. I'm absolutely committed to the power of story. And I think for me, I don't often share detailed personal stories in the space. A lot of my work is done in the corporate space where you got to keep a little bit of that personal distance. So I'm not sure not sure what the right word is here, Seth. I'm not sure if I appreciate the opportunity or you've made me nervous by the opportunity, but either way, I'm going to take the opportunity. So thank you. So many stories, and for me, it links to where we started our conversation, Seth, around COVID. I think COVID is shining a massive spotlight on the world and giving us the opportunity to reconsider some of the choices we've made as society. Have we made the right economic choices when we see how many people are left behind by a crisis, that there's very little safety net? Have we made the right choices in terms of how we've set up the world of work, where it's just so easy for companies to say, oh, we're having a downturn, so we get rid of all of our people. And obviously there's tough decisions behind every newspaper headline, but I just think it gives us this moment to reconsider, to reset even. And this links into a passion that I have for social justice. And I think people who follow me on social media, sometimes I think they get surprised because social justice is not the main thing I do with my business career. So I help people anticipate future change. And part of that is talking about how society is changing. But a lot of it has got to do with technology and demographic shifts and politics and so on. And so I think people might get interested and excited by my view of the future. Then they come and they see some of my writings on my blog and my social media, and they suddenly realize they've connected with somebody who has a real passion for social justice. And for some people, that puts them off. For me, it's coherent. It's all part of who I am. I don't see the point in changing the world just to make it more productive, more efficient, and more profitable. I want to make it better, more humane, more just, more justice focused. And so I thought, what story can I tell you that illustrates this? And maybe it's one of the first stories that switched me on. Like many other white South African young people growing up during the 1970s and 80s, I was blissfully unaware about apartheid. I'm not claiming that as a defense, and that's not. I'm not saying that defensively. We just grew up in a bubble. The apartheid was genius. Put us each in our own little bubbles, and the white bubble, Seth, was a beautiful bubble to live in, because you had these people of color who came in and cleaned your house and sometimes even looked after you and raised you, and then they disappeared again. And I don't, we didn't know what was going on. No excuses, but that was the reality. So I finished high school and I was conscripted into the military, army, and that was all happening around 1989, 1990. With the world changing, and then obviously in February 1990, our world changed dramatically as Mandela was released and the ANC was unbanned. And I was in the army at the time, and Cry the Beloved Country. Don't know if you remember the movie with Denzel Washington. It's a story of Steve Biko and the British reporter Donald Woods, and their their interactions, and how Donald Woods kind of had his eyes open to what was really happening. And Cry the Beloved Country, the movie had been, not Cry the Beloved Country, Cry Freedom. Sorry, I'm getting it. So Cry Freedom.
Yeah, I was
The
about to
movie
say
was,
Alan Payton. Alan
yeah,
Payton
sorry,
wrote the
it
book.
wasn't Alan Payne, not Cry the Beloved Country, but Cry Freedom. So the story of Donald Woods. So the movie was unbanned just after the ANC was unbanned. So we're talking February 1990. And the movie was then shown at movie theaters. And the police, on the first day it was due to be shown, the police raided the movie theaters and confiscated the movie reels and said, no, it's banned again. And then people immediately went to the courts and said, no, you can't do this. Is this how the national government's going to play this game? We release Mandela, unban the ANC, then ban them again. What's going on? So it was unbanned again. Now, this will tell you something about my personality. I wasn't planning to go and see the movie, but as soon as I discovered that it was banned, unbanned, rebanned, confiscated, I thought, now I have to see it. I don't know really what it's about, but that intrigues my maverick, sort of slightly anti-authoritarian, go against the authority structures personality. So I looked around, and it was then released on very limited release. And I looked around for where could I go and see this. And for those who know old school Johannesburg, old time Johannesburg, it was at Codrington. Right in the middle.
Let me just say, right there, Graeme Codrington is taking you back. Those of you that know Small Street Mall, Carlton, Kinney, there you go. There you go.
And it was the only place that this was showing. So I said to my girlfriend, who's now my wife, I said, Jane, let's go. And we without thinking twice, and I'm glad I didn't think twice, because if I had thought twice, I wouldn't have done it. But without thinking twice, we hauled into the middle of Johannesburg, went up the escalators, those external escalators. Now I am taking the old people back. Up to the Carlton Kinney Center, and we went to the box office and we said, can we have 2 seats, please? The person behind the box office window must have had a great sense of humor, because what she knew that we didn't was we were the only white people in that cinema that day. And she put us in the middle seats of the middle row. And then the rest of the cinema was packed. And Seth, it was packed so that people were sitting on the stairs. Clearly not everybody had tickets, but it was full for the show. And I looked around me with my army haircut. I still kind of keep my hair that short, so it's been my standard style, but it looked very military at the time. This is 1990, so it's after Mandela's release, but before CODESA and before elections. So I felt, maybe I should have thought about this a bit, but there's no ways that I'm now standing up and walking out, right? From the middle seats of the middle row. So I kind of just went down a little bit like this, and Jane and I held each other's hands a little bit tighter, and off we go with the movie. And it was great. You're watching the movie, and the movie's about the tumultuous times that are all around Sharpeville and Steve Biko, and ultimately end up obviously with Steve Biko's death. I knew nothing of this story, Seth. It was ridiculous. But I'm watching this thing, but I'm watching it like it's a movie from another country that is just a fictional story. And then something happened in the cinema. In the movie, we get to the point where June 16 happens. Now, June 16 is now famous for being the day in which young people stood up against the government, and then the government they marched in Soweto and other townships, and the government shot, government troops shot young people. So for context, for those people who don't know what I mean when I say June 16. But the point is that I didn't know what June 16 was. Never heard of it. So I'm what, 19, 20 years old, as a white South African. It's 15, 16 years later after June 16, but I literally had never heard about it. So I'm watching, the scene is being set in the movie. The children are gathering, they're marching through the streets. They're singing songs. To my English ears, I don't understand the Zulu. I don't understand the words. So I'm just hearing, South Africans, we sing when we're happy, we sing when we're sad, we sing when we're celebrating, and we sing when we're fighting. And if you don't know the difference between the sound of the songs, they all sound nice music. So I wasn't aware what was about to happen. But what happened around me, Seth, I cannot, I'm going to explain it in words, but I can't, there are no words that describe what happened. Because I began to feel something. And there was like a hush in the cinema. And I could sense that the people in the cinema, it was almost like I was watching a movie for the first time with a whole lot of people who were watching it again. And they knew what was about to happen and I didn't. It was almost like, when's the boogeyman going to jump out and give me a fright? Something's about to happen and I don't know what's going on. And these children are marching, and then you see the police, and the police are getting their guns ready, and I begin to think, okay, this isn't going to go well. And then people started crying, Seth. People started crying in the cinema. People started holding their breath. I heard a woman a few rows behind me start ululating with that funeral wail. And then the police on the movie screen started shooting at the children. And all hell broke loose in the cinema. People were diving under the seats. People were screaming. People rushed, climbed over each other to get out of the cinema. They were having PTSD and panic attacks because they weren't watching a movie. They were reliving their lives. It's sorry, it still catches me when I remember that. I've got goose flesh still. I had it in the moment because in one moment, Seth, one moment, I realized that I did not know my own country, that I did not understand what the rest of my fellow citizens had experienced in their lives. And where I was sitting in a movie house trying to be entertained by a movie, they were being given flashbacks of real life where some of them must have had family members killed that day. There's no other way in which they would have responded like that. And then I realized it wasn't that day, it was the whole of apartheid. And in an instant, I realized that I needed to spend a lot of time catching up, that I was 20 years on the planet already, but 20 years behind, maybe 100 years behind, as I worked out later, as I discovered the history of my own country. Jane and I left that movie theater shaken, of course, but we went via the market. Remember the old markets that used to happen? And the market is always what the market is, because it had only been a few weeks since Nelson Mandela was released, but there were Mandela t-shirts. And there were ANC t-shirts for sale. And I bought a Mandela t-shirt, and I bought a t-shirt with the Bill of Rights that the ANC had adopted. And until the day I finished my military service, I wore either a Mandela t-shirt or the Bill of Rights t-shirt under my military uniform every day for the rest of that year. And then committed myself to hearing the stories, to discovering the truth that had been hidden from me. And as I then developed through my 20s and 30s, began to realize what would be needed of me in terms of contribution. And for me, the phrase that I didn't know then that I now know, which I apply to it, is the phrase of privilege. I grew up in a very poor home. My father was a teacher who became a church pastor. So there's an upgrade to his salary. And my mother, because of our religious convictions, or the religious convictions of my parents growing up, she refused to work. She was a stay-at-home mom and didn't earn an income. And so, yeah. But having said that, I lived in a suburb, in a house on a quarter acre with 2 cars. And, you know, that's white privilege to be that poor in South Africa. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I had to pay for my own university. But wow, how privileged to be poor enough to be able to go to university and do a waitering job that could pay for it because people were prepared to give me money as bursaries and scholarships because my color of my skin made it easy, and the banks would give me loans. And so yeah, I didn't have a whole lot, and I didn't inherit anything, and I've worked for everything that I've got, but I had the privilege of being in a space to be able to do that, never feeling that the color of my skin would get in the way of any of the dreams I had. And of having family friends that could give me my first job and open doors for me and tell me who to speak to in order to get stuff done. And I realized and continue to realize and continue to learn that the first 20 years of my life stuffed me up big time. Sadly, I'm still a racist. Not that I want to be a racist, not that I plan to be racist, but my default setting is to think that white is better than black, to think that that the way I was brought up is normal, and I've got to continually attempt to deprogram myself and continually remind myself that what I thought I knew and understood about this country wasn't the reality. And one moment, one instant in a movie house back in March of 1990 could change so much for me. But I need to keep doing that all the time and use my privilege to help others have similar awakenings, and then to fix the problems that 100 years of inequality created. So that's just one chapter of quite a long book, but one story that changed my life and impacted me forever.
Graeme, thank you for taking the time to share. You know, when people approach the story sharing with, if I may say, kind of intrepidation, there's always a depth and honesty that just amazes me. And I want to say thank you today for stepping into that space. Friends, those of you that are out here, yes, we did a testing of the tech. Graeme knows the show now for the last 6 months. And we had him scheduled earlier in September, and we moved it to October based on calendars. But some bit of, as I listen to you, Graeme, I just want to affirm there's a mystical quality of what you just shared that we never planned for. Those of you that have been listening, you heard about Cry the Beloved Country, a book that he quoted, Alan Paton, and I submit it to you. If you're out there, you're a professional, you're a pastor, you're a CEO, read the book. Alan Paton wrote the book. Read the book. Watch the movie, Cry Freedom. I mean, a banned movie. Thank you, Denzel Washington, baby. He brought Steve Biko to life. And I mean, as you spoke about the hush moment in the movie cinema, the reason I know Kinney was when white people stopped going there. Then, later on, we were part of the crew that started moving around there in the late 80s, early 90s as teenagers. And Small Street Mall. Those of you that know the clubs that were in the city center, some of my friends are out here. This is what Graeme Codrington was talking about. And Graeme, I mean, he just brings full circle of this journey of life. So I have a surprise to say thank you to Graeme. Those of you that have been challenged, I think challenged and encouraged. So this is what I want to say to you. Firstly, Graeme, to affirm you. I believe that little story sharing moment is going to bust open tomorrow today's consultancy like you never knew was possible. Because can you imagine, we have someone with us who knows what it is to be part of the conscript generation. These are the blocks that are blocking South Africa today. Some of us that are in our corporate business world know the story that Graeme is talking about. We either were infected or affected by it and are carrying with us the stories. Now look at the power of story. If you can acknowledge what happened to you and then begin to do your own work, then maybe persons of color will not have to do the sweat equity of carrying your pain, but we can walk with you in solidarity. So Graeme, I mean, I can just go back into this little story sharing and anchor with you and maybe co-write the book with you together as I reflect with you. But if you think about futurism, wow, what Graeme Codrington has pretty much done with his life, and I want to affirm you here, there are many things that I've questioned Graeme about, and I want to thank you, Graeme, for being earnest and honest to meet me. We've done this over 20 years thereabout. I meet him maybe once a year, even when I was in the States. Come back, have a catch-up conversation, and have a, if I can say, a robust conversation around issues that are irritating us about the world that we see. Graeme, so in light of saying thank you to you, I want to bring up, and this is a part of your story. I don't think it's by happenstance that you play the trumpet, dude. Those of you that don't know, when I was at Gibbs, and Graeme and Keith had done one of our contracts with the clients through Gibbs was Deloitte. They did some work on adaptive leadership, and I followed on with the transformation day. They spoke to me about, hey, Keith and Graeme said this about you, and then I came back and I said, yeah, do you know I also know them too? And Graeme Codrington, the way that I knew that he had rhythm, I mean, I thought to myself, stereotypes. I said, what is this conscript generation, army-looking haircut guy going to know about music? But he broke it down with a trumpet. And so, in honor of you sharing your story, here's a piece from another justice activist who plays the song, Bring Back Nelson Mandela. So, Graeme, this is a thank you to you in the middle of the show. You Masekela. And we can just enjoy the piece of music.
I want to see you walking down South Africa. Tomorrow, bring back Nelson Mandela. Bring him back home to Soweto. I want to see you walking down bring him Mandela.
Now this is how I remember Graeme Codrington, everybody. And if I may say, another good friend of ours, Butjet Lamini. Graeme, how's that for you, man?
Fantastic. And you know what, Seth? Music is so important as part of storytelling. Those of us who are musicians and have music in our hearts, and I mean, even people who can't make music well, which human being doesn't love music at some level? Music helps us connect, you know. So after that experience, I wanted to get connected to the other cultures of South Africa that I'd spent 20 years missing. And music was a way in. You know, guys like Johnny Clegg led the way for white guys like us. But I thank you. I mean, Hugh Masekela, unbelievably, because I'm a trumpeter, I've played trumpet since I was 9 years old, still play today. And, you know, that those township sounds, if that's not an incorrect label to use, but those township sounds were so different from the sounds I had grown up with sort of classical and big band and swing. And it was amazing to take my trumpet and to discover a different side of myself through the music, trying to copy people like Hugh Masekela and do what he was doing. He was an absolute genius, so I could never get to his level, but to do that and then to connect with guys like yourself and Bosley and others, where we connected in a spiritual space. We connected with music, and we started to co-create music that wasn't your music or my music, it was our music. And it was wonderful to be in that space. And guys like you who led us in that space, I always look back and wonder whether it was difficult or easy or both for you guys to drag us white guys along into that space you were trying to create. But I hope some of us made it easier than harder for you. because I loved it.
Well, the specific time that I mentioned to you was at the Youth Leaders Conference, where an organization, Youth for Christ, had us do some music, and I wrote a piece of music with Marisha called Sekunjalo Siadumisa, and I said to Graeme this morning, for those of you that are online before we came on, that piece of music before it got recorded and then went national and international with a production that was created for us to bring monies as an income generating project towards Southern Africa and focus on children that were abandoned to the streets post 1990s, children that we would call community children, and also dealing at that time with the HIV/AIDS relief work. We were able to create incomes that did the work of supporting families, supporting youth workers. But Graeme and Bushle, together with a host of other musicians, another guy, Jeff Tele, Chantel, Mamuketi, were a group that came from different walks of life, and we created a beautiful space. Graeme, we want to move into this next mode, and we have about 15 minutes, so I'll let rip with this. It's that mode where we talk about thought leadership. I know Graeme's already stewing. I wouldn't be surprised when he leaves, you'll find the next book coming within the next month after his personal story sharing. And that's what I believe about it. That's why we've been doing the power story. Brené Brown talks about this in some of her writings. She says, you can either stand outside your story and hustle for your worthiness or embrace it. And I think in some bit of us hearing Graeme today, it's a great reminder. So I'm looking forward to what happens in the dialogue space as we continue to build on this, Graeme. Graeme, on the table of conversation, thought leadership, I just want to stew it like this, and then you'll take us where you want to go. Critical reflection. Werner Myers, one of the people I've really been enjoying reading in the diversity, equity, inclusion, and I would like to say the justice space. People that are doing D&I and leadership work. I mean, when I was out at the Professional Speakers Association, Graeme said, Seth, you got to go. Even though you don't know these people, go and speak at that conference. I did. And with these kind of blessing, I said, there's no future without justice. So you can tell me about technological justice, planning for the 5th, 6th, 7th industrial revolution. If we don't focus on the quality of human beings and the dignity, what justice is that? So this is a writing of a piece where Werner Myers is in a way being emboldened and courageous. So Graeme, I put this on the table. Werner Myers, a truth-telling, I call it. She states, we have used only the words that those in power could tolerate. I and many in my profession have worked hard not to offend, while at the same time asking Black and other marginalized employees to make adjustments so they can survive in a dominant culture. This forces them to shoulder the burden rather than the individuals fostering racism. That quote comes to us from an article that Werner Myers put out on LinkedIn, where she's really reflecting now as the inclusion director, diversity director of Netflix, but speaking about her experience of what she's had to do several times over to cater for a status quo culture. And one of the words that she brings up in this article is the word of oppression. Several times over, she was told on the script, we don't want that in the talk. And here she's advising us today, what is it that we need to do the risky work for so that we don't do another 20 years of just the same, even in our South African context and around the globe. So Graeme, that's what is kind of my reflection space. How do I remain courageous and true to the work that I'm called to do? Yes, I got to survive. I got to take care of my family. COVID-19 puts its pressures. But in such a time as this, there is a call for courageous conversations, fierce conversations, like Susan Scott says. And ultimately, it's got to do with that ballpark that you talk about all the time. It's about the future. So, Graeme, what say you as we talk thought leadership?
Yeah, you know what really is driving me in 2020 and the second half of 2020, maybe more than the first half, is the idea that I think almost everybody in the world now is beginning to accept that we're not going to go back to the way things were. I think for the first few months of lockdown, people were just saying, well, hang in there, grit your teeth, we'll get get over the hump, and then we'll try and put things back together again. And by back together again, they meant let's go back to how things were. You know, we can get the tourists coming again. We can all go to restaurants. We can go and buy things at the shops. You can all get back to work, and we can kind of just go back to how they were. I think that very few people are under that impression anymore. We know that COVID's going to last longer than any of us wish for or hoped for or even dreamed of. It's going to be with us, I think, at least another year. And we're going to be in deep disruption space for a long time. But more than that, I think that people have, because of the pause that COVID has forced on us, I think a lot of people have also been given the opportunity to say, but do I even want it to go back to the way that it was? You know, is anybody missing rush hour traffic and the 9 to 5 tedium of going to work? Even if you had a good job and enjoyed the job, did you enjoy the way you had to work in order to enjoy your job and to get the money you got from your job? So I think even people who haven't lost their livelihoods have still been caused to say, do I want to go back to the way things were? Or is this an opportunity to take the gift of a pause, a forced pause, yes, but a pause, to say, well, can we reset? Can we reimagine? Can we recreate something for the future? And that's where what I do for a living and what my justice passion now maybe come together more than in previous phases of my life. Because I really hope that that's how people see it, that they don't just reset for themselves. It's not a selfish reset, but it's a reset of systems and a reset of structures, because we have that opportunity. And I hope we take the opportunity. And it's not an easy thing I'm talking about, and it's not something that's a quick fix, but it's an opportunity to bring the justice conversation into the reality of the lived experience of our lives, and to actually make decisions that make real changes for the future. So we're not just talking about it anymore. We're actually doing stuff about it. So I don't know if that's a little bit too philosophical of an answer, Seth, but that's where I am in my world at the moment, looking to motivate people not just to survive the crisis and recover back to where they were, but to use the crisis as an opportunity to make big shifts. And if we can do that in the political space, in the economic framework space, if we can do that in industries, in workplace environments, if we can do that in society and in justice spaces, this could be a remarkable thing that we look back on and say, what a gift 2020, 2021 was to us and to the world, because it accelerated good things that needed doing.
This is something I just captured from Graeme Codrington. Bring the justice conversation into the reality of the lived experience of our lives. Yes, you heard it here on In Such a Time as This. I'm with Graeme Codrington, having a great conversation, some storytelling. Graeme, I have another piece of the puzzle that I'd like to put on the table. The president last week spoke around a recovery plan. I began thinking around economics, and I read an article by Harvard Business Review that spoke about John F. Kennedy in the 70s, critiquing GNP or GDP, that it later became known as, the gross domestic product. Now, I was in a conversation with some academics, and unfortunately, this is where academia doesn't help us, because if you're going to be thinking within systemic, empirical terms on productivity and economy, then we're not going to do like you're saying, Graeme. How do we shape up the new normal? How do we bring justice into this new day? And so Vernon Johns, in the pulpit of Dr. Martin Luther King, in fact, he was the predecessor of King out of that beautiful Baptist church. He spoke about justice in this way. He was at the pulpit, he bent down, he came up with carrots in one hand, straight out the soil, and beetroots in the other. And his message to the people were, if we're going to beat the system, and I'm paraphrasing now, he simply said, we need to stop being consumers and start being producers. On Sunday in our faith community, I was moved by two young people who came up to me and said, Seth, we came up with an innovative idea. And I said, what is it? They said, we're going to start our own clothing brand. I said, are you serious? They said, yes. I said, times are tough, but we have some ideas, and this is what we're going to do. Graeme, as I put it forward to you, what are some of your thoughts around economic recovery? And how do we do things differently from the normal business as usual GDP planning? And that's where I feel like we gotta shift the pulse. So what is it that you have to say for us or to us at this time?
So, Seth, let me give an example that people who've heard me speak before in the corporate space maybe have heard. It's one of my favorite examples because I think it just helps to cement this. But I think this concept of reimagining, of not just trying to do what we've always done, but slightly better, slightly faster, slightly cheaper, but thinking about how can we rebuild the systems. That's where we've got to start. So we can use fourth industrial revolution thinking, we can use new technologies, we can use the mindset shifts that are coming to completely change this. So one of the parts of the recovery plan that the president has put forward, and I'm really glad it's part of it, is NHI. So for the non-South Africans, this is a national health system that we need. And I think people fully understand now globally that you can't just say to poor people, sort yourselves out from a health perspective, good luck. Because I, as a rich person, am only as protected from COVID as the poorest person in my neighborhood is. We know this now. So a global pandemic requires a global, as in literally universal for everybody solution. So instead of us thinking about an economic recovery by trying to rescue the creaking state-run healthcare system, why don't we shift completely? We need a healthcare system, and we've got a sick care system at the moment. The sick care system, because you only get into the system when you are already sick. Why can't we build a system where you are in the system when you are healthy? Your doctor will send you a text message saying, Graeme, you are going to get sick next week. Seth, I'm looking at you. I'm looking at the data I get from your Fitbit. I'm looking at your calendar. I'm looking at the people you meet. I'm looking at how much sleep you're getting. Now, that might sound a little bit creepy. I'm not saying a human doctor's looking at it. There's data, right? There's data analytics built into a smart device that you carry around, which says, Seth, your current lifestyle, what you're currently doing, your stress levels, your blood pressure, your hydration, your sleep levels are all indicating there's the potential for a problem. The system wants to help you to keep healthy, so here are some recommendations for you. I honestly don't think that system, which would cost much more than the planned NHI system the government wants to put in place, and we could shift the whole system to be proactive. Wouldn't it be great if you only paid your doctor, Seth, on the months that you were healthy? So you get to the end of October and you say, right, 31 days of sickness-free life. Thank you, doctor. Here's some money. And if as soon as you get sick, you stop paying your doctor. Imagine how proactive your doctor would be to keep you healthy. That's the system I am trying to get the government to imagine. To say, don't, Mr. President, don't come and build the best version of an outdated system you think you can afford. Why don't you imagine what's possible in the future, work backwards from the future, and maybe you discover it doesn't cost much more than you were planning to spend anyway. And we can create here in Africa, we can create a world-class system because we just refuse to take the first world's second-hand ideas and palm them off as if they were good ideas here in South Africa and Africa. We take what actually is a very African concept of keeping people healthy by being proactive in community care. This is not a new idea. This is an ancient idea that we can just put new technology on and deliver into our own spaces. Again, I don't want people to listen to me and think that I'm some woo-woo idealist. I'm a you know me, Seth. You and I, we have fights about this. I'm a capitalist. You know that, but I'm a conscious capitalist who wants to take the power of capitalism and apply it to justice and community development, and find that space which doesn't exist yet, because the spaces we've created in history are the separate spaces of communism and Marxism, which is the labels that people don't like to give it, and then greedy capitalists on the other side, which is the label that people who don't like it give. But I think there's space in between where technology and new approaches to community and engagement can find something we haven't had before. So call me an idealist, but this is the way I'm going to live and die. And I hope that it can contribute to some people, at least, who have the levers of power in their hands, saying it's worth trying. It's worth trying to build a system that can truly deliver something special, rather than a system that can just deliver 5% more than what we've got at the moment. Again, maybe that's more philosophical than useful, but that's my frame of reference.
Graeme, thank you for taking the time today. Those of you that are out there, it's been an honor for me to be with a friend, a colleague, Graeme Codrington. Please keep in touch with him. I'm going to ask him for him to just send me on some details. Those of you that have been online, Graeme is doing some work around this disruption or disruptive realities, and how we can rethink, reimagine in such a time as this. Please say a closing word about that. I know you were planning to do a workshop yesterday or today, I think it is, a webinar, and I hope that you do repeat it, because I think it was a great conversation. So Graeme, say something about that, and then also
thanks.
It's your time to say goodbye as well.
Yep, perfect. So I developed during lockdown, one of the things I did was to develop an online course called Dealing with Disruption. And yeah, go to my website, graemcodrington.com. You'll pick up information there. Maybe actually even a better place to send you is my YouTube channel. So I did something yesterday, but we've already put the recording, like you will, Seth, for this conversation. We make these available to inspire and hopefully help people. So youtube.com/Graeme Codrington. I put everything up there. It's all for free. Use it, get the conversation started, and inspire people to not just rebuild what is being broken and damaged. Broken and damaged by COVID, broken and damaged by corruption and maladministration in our politics and our business world. People forget that there's more corrupt people in the business world than in the parliament. And broken and damaged by apartheid and colonialism, and broken and damaged by this world that we live in. We don't succumb to the broken and damaged. We bind up the wounded, and we set our sails for justice and freedom. And gee, that sounded, Seth, I don't know what you've done to me this morning. That's not the normal language I speak.
All I'm going to say is this: those guys that you're going to after this. I know Graeme's going to be heading to a talk at a corporate company. I promise you this. Part of this rhythm that he set up here. Don't be surprised he comes back with an offering that ends up at the presidential office on the NHI plan for the future. And that's what it's taking. I may not say capitalism as easy as Graeme says, but a few years ago, one of my mentors, Ismail Vadi, said, Seth, stay away from that word socialist because it will scare people. So I called it in an academic paper, a socializing democracy. In the coffee trade, because I know Graeme likes coffee and so do I, it simply sounds like this. What is the difference between free trade and fair trade? Now, those are concepts, but I want to say in closing today, like Kate Raworth of Donut Economics, maybe those of us that are out there in the academic space, in the church space, let's get reading. And she thinks about the 21st century and beyond. She says, don't wait for economic growth to reduce inequality. I love it. Because it won't, she says. Instead, create an economy that is distributive by design. Friends, this has been myself and Graeme Codrington. It's been awesome hanging out with you, Graeme. I hope we can do this again.
Definitely.
Peace out to you and the Tomorrow Today colegas, and also greet Jane and the family for us. Thank you and goodbye. Friends, that's been an awesome time right here with Graeme Codrington as I play out. Thank you for joining us. Next week, I am not going to be broadcasting as we normally will. I know some of you are quite saddened by that, but we'll be back in the first week of November. However, next week, please look out for the organization I'm connected with. Heartlines will be doing an online national training on the 28th of October around What's Your Story. So if you liked a little bit of the rhythm that we prepped with Graeme Codrington, it's a beautiful way to engage in who we are, who the other is, and what we can be doing to shape our social space, our economic space for the future. Watch out for that national training. And if you're interested, you can inbox me. I'll also be putting some bit of those announcements and the coming training for this national training. Well, I figure it's going to be an international training on What's Your Story as you begin to use story and the power of story to shape, hopefully, a blessed and new future. So as we play out, I want to take it back to that beautiful piece of music that I had going earlier with Graeme Codrington in studio. Again, thank you to Graeme Codrington and Tomorrow Today for being with us. But let's play out at the close of the show with Yuma Sakela saying, bring him back home as we remember those sounds of Sophia Town jazz that gave people hope. I hope this puts some hope inside you in this 209 days of lockdown. Be safe, be well, and keep building a sustainable, equitable future for us all through the power of story and great thought leadership. Peace out from me.
Thank you.